So, Howlround is a knowledge commons by and for the theater community. And what we mean by knowledge commons is that we're essentially a hub for people, in this case, theater makers and practitioners from around the world, to share their learning, their expertise, their challenges, their experiences of making work. And we do that through a number of online platforms, primarily online platforms that are all open source, free to access, and provide essentially no barriers to participation. So the most well-known platform is this online journal that we have, and we publish content every day. But we also have a live streaming television channel and a new play map, and we host gatherings, in-person gatherings, every so often as well. So it's definitely, the overriding idea is that we believe that theater is for everyone, and we believe that we're trying to sort of democratize the conversation and trying to use technology, and in this case, in a lot of ways, disruptive technologies, to promote the kind of change that will push the field forward. I was working at Arena Stage, which is a large regional theater in Washington, D.C., and in 2009, we founded something called the American Voices New Play Institute, and it was focused a lot on playwright residencies, trying to embed playwrights at the center of an institution, and it also had a line item for documentation and dissemination. So from that, we began to create a live streaming television channel, which at the time was called New Play TV, and we also started hosting gatherings of practitioners from around the field who, on pressing topics. And then in about 2010, my boss, Polly Carl, who was then at Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago, approached us and said that she had this idea for a journal that she wanted to start. And it was, the goal was that she wanted to really bring artists back to the center of the conversation. And so we said, well, hey, we have this line item for documentation and dissemination. Let's try to, let's see what we can do. And so Howlround launched in January 2011, and that was while we were still at Arena Stage. We became Howlround, the Howlround as an organization that folks know now, in July 2012, when we all moved from Arena Stage to Emerson College in Boston. So I guess that's a long way of saying that I was involved in the making of a precursor to Howlround at Arena, and then it has sort of evolved and grown since then here at Emerson College. I think one thing that binds all of us is a sort of intellectual engagement with these ideas, and also like a really strong interest in the world at large, which sounds really sort of facile, but I guess what I would say is most of us, came to theater, like we weren't theater majors, right? Like we came to theater from like the world. And I think that also really influences a lot of the conversations we have, and I think that's something that, is really special about our team and about just, the environment we get to work in. I think the big, like the fundamental challenge is a scarcity mindset, a sense that, especially in the U.S. at least, that the pie is only so big, and we need to be competing with one another in order to make it, right? It's kind of, Darwinian. And I think that where we are coming from, like our fundamental bedrock is a place of abundance, that we believe that there is enough for everyone. We believe that resources have historically and even still today not been shared efficiently. And by resources, I mean not just money, I mean knowledge, I mean, collaboration, all of that, right? And so I think that is sort of like pretty much everything we ever rub up against has something to do with that sense. And because that's a very, in some ways, it's not anti-capitalist, but it's like it's very countercultural. It's very different than everything that we're even just subconsciously, entrenched to believe and operate under. We are primarily grant supported. The college does support us. The college helps to fill the gap, essentially, but we are, I would say, 90% grant funded. So that's a lot of the work we do is raising money to be able to do this work. Yeah, so that has definitely been a challenge for us, and one that I think as we grow as Howlround, we've begun to get better at talking about what we do, but it's definitely a challenge. In our office, we call it the head tilt because it's like everything that we're doing is, by design, very anti the status quo, anti, a lot of the structures that we've all become accustomed to working in. And so that has definitely been a challenge for us. However, we've also been very lucky that there are some sort of keystone funders who really understand what we're after and who have supported us incredibly and are passionate about the work that we're doing. And so I definitely think we have room to grow there still. And it's sort of an ongoing thing of trying to come up with language that expresses who we are and what we do in a way that people can find an entry point, but I think it's iterative. It's always evolving. So the Latino Theater Commons was founded in May 2012, and it really grew out of a desire from a group of 8 Latino theater artists we had gathered for a one-day conversation, who really were galvanized and said that there had been a number of recent things that had happened casting-wise and programs that had shut down and things that they really were feeling like they wanted to sort of gather. Make a space for a national gathering for folks to come back together and kind of have a, in some ways, a state of the union on like what is Latino theater, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, how do we update the narrative of the American theater to reflect the reality of the world we live in, which is multicultural and polycultural, and obviously, demographically, the U.S. is, in a sea change right now, and everyone can see it coming down the pike. So why is the work that we're seeing on our stages not reflecting the reality? So that was sort of the founding impulse. And the role that Howlround has played with Latino Theater Commons is really one of helping to provide the infrastructure for this group to, achieve these interventions, right? And so we had a national gathering in Boston in 2013, and then there was a big festival in Los Angeles in 2014, as well as a convening. And then this past summer, we had a new play reading festival at DePaul University in Chicago. Simultaneously, the goals of the LTC, which were charted at that first convening, it is all about advocacy, convening and networking, scholarship, and art making. And so also concurrent with these projects, the LTC launched Cafe Onda, which is the online journal of the LTC, which essentially is a part of the greater Howlround journal, but provides content that is relevant to and of special interest to Latino theater makers. So, for Howlround, the LTC has been such an important project because it really is, I think, the greatest example that we have, concrete example of the power of a commons-based approach, right? Which is really about people bringing what they have, from their own space, from their community, from their experience, and banding together for the sake of something bigger than the I. And the sort of momentum that has been able to be generated by the LTC as a totally self-organized volunteer collective of artists from all over the country is pretty incredible, and I think it illustrates it illustrates the potential and the power of what happens when people gather around shared values. I think for me the most exciting thing is the breadth and depth of the theater making community that has been made visible through Howlround platforms. I mean, I do think that in the beginning, as much as we were like, oh, we don't really know what's out there, there is some sort of entrenched idea that you know the theaters and the people and whatever. And the beauty of Howlround, really, for me, has been the fact that the way the platforms are designed really does reveal a whole community that, or the community in a way that I never would have seen it before. I mean, it really does. It really does reveal what is actually out there, as opposed to like this mental, the mental map that we all have, which is inherently flawed. And I think that's been pretty inspiring for me. Just to get a sense of, and it's still not complete, right? But to have a better sense of all of the amazing work that's happening in places, near and far. I mean, like the number of contributors that we've had who, are doing work in, in very rural communities and, non-traditional work, like even community theater. I mean, it's sort of expanded the conversation in that way, and that's really exciting to me. And specifically, like the new playmat, for instance, one of the founding impulses for that was that we wanted to reveal the infrastructure that helped to develop new work. We wanted to figure out, like, what is the actual journey of a new play. We also wanted to dispel some of the overriding, the sort of, dominant myths of like, oh, a play has to open in New York to be successful, or a play has to be at a certain kind of theater to have a continued life. And really what the new play map has shown us is a sort of huge swath of, way more organizations than I think any of us imagined, A. And B, that there is sort of no one-size-fits-all for the journey of these plays. And so it's been really fascinating to see just how many organizations really fundamentally are working together to like make these things come to life, and to try to kind of give credit where credit is due, right? And to acknowledge that there is no way a play appears on a stage with, generally speaking, one organization behind it, right? It's like, I mean, it really does take a village. And so it's sort of exposing that village in a way that, is data-driven and is visualized and all that. And this is not in response to your question, but I do want to say this.
Yes.
So one of the things I'm most excited about right now is, two things, but I'll start with one. Okay, is that we are about to start working on a new play map again in a really concerted fashion, and we're going to be relaunching the project as the World Theater Map. We are changing it. It is not just going to focus on new work. It is for all theater, and it's not just going to be about the generative artists. Like right now, the way it's set up, it was very, we started it when we were at Arena, and the focus was new plays, and it was very American focused. And now we're in this whole other context, right? And so there'll be the possibility to have, directors and designers and, anyone, actors, make a profile. And we're hoping that will, really, I think the possibilities there, if we can get it right, are pretty incredible. And we plan to have it linked to Howlround content as well. So like, say you search a theater, you see their profile, but then you also see any content to date that is related to that theater. And it'll be mobile compatible, so you can use GPS and see what theater is happening around you at night. We're hoping to launch it in Spanish, French, and English. Wow. So, and just the technology itself right now is really outmoded on the new play map. When we started building it, there was not nearly the amount of sort of mapping just technologies that there are now. It's come so far, even in just the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. So, we'll also be updating all of that. So hopefully it's way more user friendly and functional. So I'm super pumped about that. That could be yeah.
Yeah.
I think so much of, I think the greatest question facing theater is one of relevance moving forward. And I think that until we create systems that put programming on our stages that is reflective of our community and those stories, and create structures so that theater really can be for everyone and not just the wealthy, upper middle class in our, in this country, white people. I think that we're doing the world a disservice. I think that culture is plays such an important part in shifting society and in shifting and in demanding the kind of fundamental equity and justice that I think we all want to see in the world. So I do think that I think from Howlround's vantage point, we're trying to promote equity. In all of its manifestations. And I think that if the theater can do that in a way that is thoughtful, I think that it will help shift society. And shift economics. Right now, right now, Howlround is helping to support a new initiative called the Jubilee. And the Jubilee is calling for, it's a radical provocation. It's calling for every theater in the U.S. in for the season 2020-2021 to only produce work by women, by people of color, by LGBTQIA artists, by artists with disabilities. It's essentially saying let's radically shift the norm, and let's recognize that all of these voices have been marginalized for so long, and let's recognize that we have real issues today with what is represented on our stages. And I guess I feel here's the thing. I feel if, say in this utopian world, say everybody does this, okay? There's no way that if that happened and all of those audience members for that year saw a totally different swath of stories that expanded their view of the world and how they fit into it, that could not have some kind of positive impact on something as, real as, poverty.